those plebes are not gonna have layer 1 Bitcoin anymore. Like it's like, think about it this way, right? Layer 1 is BIS, right? It truly is the last level of settlement, right? Something like layer 2, like Lightning, Liquid, things like that, they're gonna be like wires, so you're gonna be transferring, minimum $5,000 on them in order to be worth it. And then you're gonna have everything else on, this sort of like layer 3s that may be pegged, maybe not be pegged. It's gonna be a dance, and that's what like a voluntary anarchic system is, right? Like you have a spontaneous order where through demand things magically appear that solve the problem because there is money to be made, and like there's not gonna be perfect, right? There is no perfect. I mean, look what we have now. It's like literally death. The US dollar is like extremely toxic, right? It bombs countries, right? Every time it needs a pump. So, like just moving from like, bomb based monetary system to like, voluntary based imperfect system, it's already like, again, a million times win.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. The Bitcoin time chain is 835112, and the value of 1 Bitcoin is still 1 Bitcoin. Today's episode is Bitcoin Talk, where I talk with my guest about Bitcoin and whatever else comes up. Today, that guest is NVK, creator of CoinKite, the Cold Card, the Block Clock, and the just-released Unleashed.Chat, a private AI you pay for in Bitcoin. He's also the host of the Bitcoin Review podcast and probably a few dozen other things that I'm not mentioning here. NVK and I dig into a few current debates in Bitcoin, talk about Noster, eCash, game theory, and economic incentives, and the intersection of Bitcoin and AI, plus a whole lot more. This conversation with NVK put a lot of things in perspective for me, in terms of what actually deserves our attention and what is just a distraction. Plus, NVK is just a hilarious dude, so I'm confident you'll have as much fun listening to this conversation as I did while recording it. Before we dive in, if you like the Bitcoin Podcast, do me a favor and share an episode you find valuable on Noster or Twitter, or if you listen on Fountain, which I recommend because honestly, it's just so much better than any of the other podcasting platforms out there, and you can earn Bitcoin by listening to this show and others. But anyway, on Fountain, create a clip of an episode you find valuable so it reaches more people. I am a one-man show trying to build out another fucking Bitcoin podcast, and the best way you can support this show is to share it with your friends, family, and strangers on the internet. You can also support this show by going to bitbox.swiss/Walker and using the promo code WALKER for 5% off the fully open source, Bitcoin-only Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. You can subscribe to the Bitcoin Podcast wherever you get yours, Rumble, YouTube, X even, and listen on Fountain or any other podcasting platforms. Just search for the Bitcoin Podcast. And finally, if you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring another fucking Bitcoin podcast, hit me up on social media or through the website bitcoinpodcast.net. Without further ado, let's get into this Bitcoin talk with NVK. Well, thank you for sharing your scarce time here. I know you are a very busy guy. Also, you have an awesome background there. There's a lot going on there, and I dig
There's
it.
a lot of crap there.
There's a lot. I mean, I don't know if it's crap per se, but there's a lot of stuff. That's pretty nice. Do you keep that block clock that you have there just set in the hello mode, just to say hello?
Oh, I'm doing some reorg here because I dropped one of my OGs and it broke.
No.
One of my clock OGs broke, so I need to fix that one, and I'm reorganizing my background. I think I added too many of the things we do in the background.
I don't know. I mean, it's the old school block clock is pretty sweet, I've got to say. Was that like a first gen mock up, basically? Like, let's see if we can get this thing to work.
No, we made a bunch of these. They were sold for 1 BTC each
Holy.
in I don't know, many years ago. It was the anniversary of 10 years of Bitcoin.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Well, I have I have the block clock mini. Also, so is that just the block clock then? And then that's why the block clock mini is actually the big block clock, and then there's the block clock
Yes.
micro.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the actual block clock.
So are you ever gonna make like a block clock maxi that's like extremely fucking big, like really large, like tabletop size or something?
Maybe. I don't know. Like we we thought about making a lot of weird things. uh they're definitely on the list to do, but
It's a long
yeah,
list.
it's there's not enough time, man. We have a GitHub issue with like 500 ideas of like stuff we want to
Oh my
make.
god.
I don't have time. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's next.
Oh man. Well, yeah. Time is always the bitch, right? But I again appreciate you sharing some of that with me because I wanted a chance to have you on. It looked like, by the way, Madeira looked like an absolute amazing time. It seems like
Oh,
that was a
I had such a good time.
high signal.
Yeah, it was kind of like a family reunion.
Yeah.
It felt more like a family reunion than a conference. Um, and I mean, the open source stage was awesome. We had a lot of great panels. A lot got done. The folks from Solver Engineering were there for 2 months. Um, and so there were like 20, 30 devs there for a while. Lots of good friends came. We did some good hiking. There were a lot of great meals had. The younger folks did a lot of party.
No partying for you.
No, man, I was like, no. I all I did was like great smaller dinners.
Okay, well that works too. That's the like I feel like especially now that I have a child, that's like the my version of a party now too. It's like
That's right, man. Congrats. Welcome to the club.
thank you. It's a cool club to be in. It's amazing. There's just this little guy now just hanging out with us all the time. And it's like, wow, you are just a full little human being. And now it's our job not to fuck you up too bad.
That's right. I mean, you can't really improve them. You can only fuck them up. They are who they are already.
Yeah.
It's kind
good
of a
advice.
fascinating thing.
Oh man. Yeah, no, it's a trip. It gives, I've got to say, just thinking about like how Bitcoin kind of changes you with time preference and such makes you think more longer term. Man, having a kid is like that on steroids where you're just like, oh,
Oh, it's skin in the game, right?
wow. Yeah. Like the future really matters now. Like not just because I want to be able to chill later in life, like because I want to be able to provide a life for you, or at least provide the pathway to be able to make choices. Like I don't want you to be a pampered little Nancy, but I want you to have options, you know?
Well, I mean, Bitcoiners are the great replacement, right? We're gonna have to replace because people don't make babies. So Bitcoiners are gonna like breed themselves into a new world.
I mean, if you look at the Bitcoin baby number go up stats during the bear market, it seems like people were very busy making Bitcoin
Yep.
babies, which is great. Like we need, and for the people that say like I don't want to have kids because I want to save the planet, it's like okay, fine, you're out of the gene
Great.
pool.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I commend your sacrifice. We really appreciate you. Darwinism really works. It's amazing.
It is incredible. It's like, yeah, I don't know if Darwin exactly could have predicted that people would be so willingly removing their genes from the pool. But I mean, hey, here we are. What a time to be alive.
It's everything's good for Bitcoin.
Even, even strange Green Party folks deciding not to have kids for the planet is good for Bitcoin. Well, it's funny now this is like my first, well, I guess not my first bull market. I didn't get into Bitcoin until 2020 after seeing or hearing about Bitcoin multiple times and dismissing it over the years, and now looking back and kicking myself, of course. And then finally in 2020, it was like I could no longer ignore it because the government was just sending out checks to people. And I was like, where's this money coming from? Maybe I should look at that Bitcoin thing again because I remember something about it being not inflatable out of thin air. But had that, like, that was a strange little bull run time last time, I guess, like throughout 2020, 2021, and just like so much hype and fluff and stadiums being named with, crypto.com stadium and the whole FTX thing. And now it's like I mean, Moscow time is very early right now. And it seems like, and I don't know from your perspective, having been around a bit longer, but it seems like there's less general hype going into this halving. And by hype, I don't mean like lack of excitement, because the Bitcoin community seems very excited. But I'm still not really getting. I've had like one friend reach out being like, "So you still into that Bitcoin thing?"
Do you know why?
Or yeah,
it hasn't
why?
even started.
Yeah.
See, like when the price starts to do the first little pumps and sort of normally reaches all-time high, it's, and this has been true through previous cycles too. It really is only the in group that knows about it, that pays attention. Like once it really starts to break through mainstream media, and things start to really go crazy then.
Yeah.
It's just early.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. I kind of, it makes me miss though the bear market times of just, debating why, I mean, not really even that it's a debate, but just explaining to folks like Saifedean why stainless steel is inferior to cast iron, and just like conversations like that really taking up a lot of our time. And now it seems like perhaps those days of stainless steel versus cast iron debates are behind us. And I don't know.
No, we're gonna bring stakes back to Twitter.
Good.
Or
I did
Noster,
see,
really.
I did see.
Twitter.
Yeah, I did see your stake post on Noster. I was like, okay, I'm glad to see that. We need more meat out there.
Yeah, let's go back to stakes. The ETF talk is not for us. It's for the normies. Like, it's their honeypot. Like, I don't waste my time talking about ETFs. It's for them. It's a great thing, but it's for them.
And no, it's so true. And it feels, I'm curious on Noster, just to kind of get your thoughts on the ecosystem in general, because you have the Bitcoin review podcast, which is like an incredible resource, just not only for Bitcoin, but you've had Pablo and Kai and a bunch of other people who are working on stuff on Noster on there as well. And kind of what you see, do you think we had a big run up in adoption with Noster? I think like right when like Jack and Snowden were getting on there and people were like, wow, what is this? Right around the time that Elon was saying, he decided to lump Noster in with Instagram and Mastodon and these other things that people had heard of. And then it was like, what the fuck is this Noster thing? And a bunch of people jumped on. It seemed to be kind of like there was a small plateau, and there's been a little bit of a steady climb. I think Primal is saying that there's like maybe 750,000 people, users on Noster. How many of those are active remains to be seen. But do you think we start to see, like in 2024, there's global elections this year, right? Like tons of, I think like a historic number of elections across the world, which means probably a historic amount of censorship is going to happen. Do you think we start to see that drive more people to Noster just out of necessity? Or do you think we still kind of continue this slow and steady climb and people don't pay attention to it for a few years?
It's the waves of adoption, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works. I mean, this is true for Bitcoin as well. It comes in waves, right? And then we have this big lulls, sort of like valleys in the middle. Noster's been growing a lot, especially after the Primal sort of like very normie friendly solution. And it's very easy to pay people as well, like the Venmo experience. There is Unleashed.Chat now, so you can do the Grok thing. It's things are moving. I mean, like there's a lot of new users as well. It's just it's not loud yet. But I really think that either through a fuck up of censorship or something like that, or by a celebrity or a few celebrities coming to Noster, things will sort of like heat up again, and then they'll drop again. It's cycles of adoption, right? I heard that Jay-Z has an account on Noster. It's just like it's a NIM.
Really?
So that's pretty funny.
I mean, I believe it. Like he's with Jack, and I would have been surprised if Jack hadn't casually brought up Noster a couple of times.
I don't know. I mean, it could be a joke, and Jay-Z is not there. I don't know, but I've heard from sources that is a possibility.
Sources
Um,
familiar with the matter.
that's right. I think it's coming in, and I think so Tidal is going through some changes, and once they start signing like young talent, and sort of like do a deeper integration in Noster, I think you're gonna see a lot of that. Um, it's one of those things. It's like everything takes time.
Yeah.
you know, tooling needs to be built, solutions need to be invented. It's time. But the trend is there, right? Like we can see the growth trend is going. So I'm pretty bullish on Noster. It resolves a lot of problems in much better ways. Um, I wouldn't be able to grok Twitter. I tried. They don't open anymore the API, right? I can grok all Noster. I can ask what Lynn is thinking today
Yeah.
about macro, and it gives me a summary. It's amazing. Um,
It is incredible. And just for anyone listening, also, you should go to Unleashed.Chat and check this out, because that is what you're talking about when you say grok Noster. You can ask questions. I've been loving using it. Because, and I'll sometimes like compare it to ChatGPT, like, run them both side by side and just see like, okay, what answers is it going to give? But ChatGPT does not have up-to-date information on Noster.
That's
Like
right.
it just doesn't have it. And I loved the Unleashed experience of like, there's no sign up there. I mean, you can put in your email if you want, but I think you guys just added Noster sign in as well.
Yeah.
Or that, yeah. And you just send some sats, top up your account, and you can use all of these. You have Minstrel, you have what's the I've got it up here. The other
The Mixtral, there is Cynthia, which is a
yeah.
GPT type. There is there's like 4, I think,
Yeah.
models there. We'll keep on adding models as they come out, and they're all mostly uncensored, which is great. So
What is can you explain like what that exactly means in the context of these models when you say the model is uncensored? Does that mean it's not like it's the antithesis of like the Google Gemini basically?
yeah, so part of the way most models are developed by like big entities, right? Because it's like it needs like millions and millions of dollars, big brains, and a lot of people, right? It's not a simple thing. But the problem is they all adhere to all this DEI stuff, the diversity, equity, inclusion crap. So the models have hard sort of like lines around a lot of stuff that is not based on reality, like men can get pregnant, you know. No joke. Like that is like literally in there. So what happens is when a lot of when the models get open sourced, they are essentially lobotomized by the community. That's why it's not perfect uncensored, but it's mostly there. And sometimes can have like some funny, weird sort of like side effects when you do the lobotomy. But it does work. I mean, you can ask for a adult story describing on how to like I don't know like a recipe for a bomb, and make it offensive in a certain category that's very very cringe. And it should be able to resolve, generate something that will make you proud.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a challenge out there. Also these big companies, they have to do so much bullshit from governments that they're trying to pick their fights as well. It's not that simple, but the future is bright. I mean, the open source models are sort of like trending towards being as good, if not better, than the closed source stuff. And also, a lot of the big companies, they have to open source their models because they hit walls. So they see how the community fixes stuff, and then they either incorporate them or acquire them. But that's the trend.
Yeah, it's a promising trend, because at the end of the day, like if they want to stay competitive, if they want to try and maintain what little moat they perceive themselves to have, a lot of brains working on a problem are going to be better than a few brains in a room that are also handicapped by whatever regulations they're subject to,
Yep.
or whatever, corporate DEI policies they're subject to. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And it's one of those things where like once the genie is out of the bottle, it's very hard to get that genie back in there. And now everyone can ask that genie questions. versus the open/closed AI model of we're building something we're on the cusp of something that's so dangerous that we have to regulate absolutely everything. And it seems to be there's so much fear mongering that actually comes from the big centralized AI companies because they know that their moat is shrinking, and they know that. What's your take on that?
I don't know. Like they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I mean, there is a lot of business for everyone. Like this market hasn't even started. But Walker, we're winning. Freedom is winning. Okay, it's like don't get caught up on the Twitter news and all the bad vibes around. We're winning. We're totally winning. This is what winning looks like. It just takes time.
Yeah, no, it feels good to win too. Well, it's nice to know that there are so many people who are like yourself and like Pablo, like Kai, just because we touched on them earlier, like building out. Kai, I did a interview with him, and he walked me through all of the eCash side of things, which is like this, I think, really cool. Again, just talk about like these open source solutions for privacy. And he was very clear, like, look, this is a custodial solution. There are drawbacks to this. This does not solve scaling Bitcoin. It does not solve XYZ, but it does provide near perfect privacy for certain types of, custodial transactions. Yep. And like those little things kind of chip away at the chains that are, the powers that be, let's say, are trying to put in place. And those things give me a lot of hope because people don't need to ask for permission. They just build them and then they put them out there, and then it's an open protocol and anyone can build whatever they want on it. And that's a really, really powerful thing. I'm curious because I think you had Kaye on Bitcoin Review as well.
Yes,
and
Kaye is great.
He's amazing. And you obviously have a much deeper technical knowledge than I do. I've noticed, like, I put out that episode with Kaye, and there was a lot of people being like, "Oh, eCash is a shit coin, this custodial." And Kaye's like, "Look, I said that, like I said that this is a custodial solution. I said, don't trust your life savings to, etc." What's your take on eCash in general, and why do you think there's such a I've seen a larger pushback than I thought there would be against eCash? Like, I don't know. I don't see it pretending to be anything it's not.
There's a lot of Bitcoiners, especially like 2017 class and on, who don't seem to understand that trust will never go away. Like there is no such thing as trustless, right? There's just different trust models and different sets of trade-offs, right? Bitcoin is the best thing that we have closer to trustless, right? Because essentially we have all this like very complex dynamic on how to essentially like have the miners and they're fighting the nodes, the economic nodes, and then you have the difficulty adjustment. There's this whole balance of things. But Bitcoin is extremely limited by design so that it can achieve that, right? Like, there's only so much throughput for transactions, and there is only so many sats, right? 2 quadrillion sats. And distribution of money, wealth, or any asset really is always going to be unequal, right? So right now, maybe you have 10 million people who own 98% of all Bitcoin, right? That's already amazing compared to the distribution of wealth in the world right now, right? Which is 1 basis point of the world owns, 50% of the world's wealth. So we're already winning, right? Again, the trend continues. So we're already making the world 1,000 times better, literally, right? Like it's like if we get to 1% of the world owning 50% of the wealth, it's already 1,000 times better. So when you start to put these things into perspective, things look much better. Now, there is not enough sats for everybody in the world, right? Like, there's 8 billion people in the world, and there's absolutely no way with their economic capacity that they're going to be able to make on-chain transactions, right? Like, period. Not going to happen. So what do we do, right? I mean, we already fixed the central banking problem. That's kind of a biggie, right? Like, they no longer need to have an asset backed by an asset that devalues, right? They can have an asset backed by an asset that is like deflationary. Okay, wow. again, a million times better for the world. And then you have, you have the problem, which is like all the layer 2 stuff is bound by Bitcoin block dynamics, right? So Lightning, Liquid, all this stuff, like it still has like very hard limits on throughput because it is bound by the UTXO trying to go through a block, right? So then what's the solution? Well, it's the word that nobody likes, inflation. So, but it's not that simple, right? Because that's essentially what free banking does, right? Like original free banking, not bullshit central free banking. So what eCash does is makes everybody into a capable free bank, right? And if you have a trust model where you know how to punch, I call it proof of punch. You have your Dunbar number of 150 people using that mint, and the guy, is trying to make those UTXOs available to a group of people who wouldn't otherwise have access to those UTXOs through eCash tokens. And the guy rugs them, they know how to punch, right? In a lot of these places, people do carry around machetes. So these things will resolve themselves one way or another, either through a block or through a block. So through a brick, block or brick. So anyway, so like it is remarkable though the other properties that you do get from this eCash tokens, right? You get like perfect privacy. It's a bearer instrument. It is fast, right? Like you don't have to wait for anything. And it de-risks by having 1 million of them, right? You can have 1 million mints, all at low value. Some of the eCash tokens can even have proof of reserves on the mint, right? So I think people are getting caught up on this stuff because they just don't understand Bitcoin. Nobody understands Bitcoin, and they definitely don't understand eCash, which is even more complicated. So, but I think nothing like demand based engineering, right? Mm-hmm. To resolve these problems. Like there is demand for these things, and there's people who need to buy stuff. So we'll figure it out.
Speaking of figuring things out, it's always a great time to figure out your Bitcoin security. Head to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker for 5% off the Bitcoin-only BitBox02 hardware wallet. Then get your Bitcoin off the exchange and into your own self-custody. The BitBox02 is truly easy as hell to use, whether you are brand new to Bitcoin or you are a seasoned psychopath deep down the rabbit hole. It's Bitcoin only. It's fully open source, and you don't have to trust me. Just head to their GitHub and verify for yourself. When you go to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use promo code Walker, not only do you get 5% off, but you also help support this fucking podcast. So thank you. Yeah, I think that the something I heard actually on Bitcoin Review, to give that a shout out again recently. I think it was maybe you were with, I think it was Harry Suddock maybe, but basically talking about, like the Bitcoin is for everyone versus Bitcoin is for anyone versus Bitcoin is available to everyone, but it's not going to be for everyone. It's available to everyone right absolutely. Now. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's one of the big misconceptions a lot of Bitcoiners have. Like, it's very easy to say Bitcoin is for everyone. I've tried to change my nomenclature to say Bitcoin is for anyone, because I think that is an important distinction. But can you talk about how you think about that? Because a lot of Bitcoiners think like, oh yeah, we're gonna bank all the unbanked on Bitcoin layer 1, and in reality, that's just not possible.
Most plebes are not gonna have layer 1 Bitcoin anymore.
Right.
Like it's like, think about it this way, right? Layer 1 is BIS, right? It truly is the last level of settlement, right? Something like layer 2, like Lightning, Liquid, things like that, they're going to be like wires. So you're going to be transferring, minimum $5,000 on them in order to be worth it. And then you're going to have everything else on, this sort of like layer 3s that may be pegged, maybe not be pegged. It's going to be a dance. And that's what like a voluntary anarchic system is, right? Like you have a spontaneous order where through demand, things magically appear that solve the problem because there is money to be made. And there's not gonna be perfect, right? There is no perfect. I mean, look what we have now. It's like literally death. The U.S. dollar is like extremely toxic, right? It bombs countries, right? Every time it needs a pump. So, just moving from bomb-based monetary system to voluntary-based imperfect system, it's already again a million times win.
I think we should start calling the fiat bomb-based monetary system. I think that's a good clarification for it. Forget the petrodollar, forget whatever. No, this is bomb-based money. It has a nice ring to it. I mean, a very dark and sad ring to it, but it's I think it's a good way to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be this guy who used to sell stickers and T-shirts way back in the day called Bitcoin Not Bombs.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect analogy to this stuff. But yeah, a lot of these things sort of get lost in the arguments on Twitter and things like that. It's Bitcoin Twitter is kind of dying in a way. It's all migrating to either Noster or DMs and other things like that. But yeah, people just get caught up in the loser mindset. It's like we're winning, so chill, enjoy.
I like that because I think also part of it is sometimes many Bitcoiners may feel like if they acknowledge the actual limitations of Bitcoin, that they're somehow conceding defeat to the Bitcoin naysayers. Like if I go out there and I say to the TradFi, finfluencer person on Twitter, on X, that, well, yeah, Bitcoin actually won't scale to this many people on layer one and bank the unbanked, that they somehow win my little internet debate. And it's like, no. You're forgetting what Bitcoin layer one is solving for, which is,
the first mistake was having an internet debate.
Yeah,
just don't go there. You dunk on the TradFi guys on Twitter and then you close it.
Yeah.
Who cares what their answer is going to be?
Yeah.
It's completely irrelevant.
And it takes too much effort and time to refute their incorrect assumptions and opinions.
Yes,
just
it's
go
pointless,
out, go out and do something else.
Did you see Bill Ackerman losing his mind on Twitter yesterday? Yes. It was brilliant. These guys are all realizing that they're all short Bitcoin. So they're gonna cope. They're gonna have the 5 stages of grief, like everybody else, and they're gonna buy Bitcoin at the price that they deserve.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing to watch some of these realizations from very from highly regarded people in the TradFi space who have been very successful in this fiat world, and then all of a sudden realize, oh shit, I don't own any Bitcoin. I am literally short Bitcoin. This might be a problem. But,
to me, what's the whole fun of this is that the dumber you are, the more likely you are to have more Bitcoin. So it's just perfect. All these guys think of themselves as the most brilliant thing on earth, which is great. I'm sure there's some smart ones there, but being smart on this is going to give you the biggest the biggest what's the word again? I forgot.
Blind spot?
Anyway, blind spots. Thank you.
Yeah. It's the middle of the bell curve blind spot, right? You either need to be really dumb or really smart. And if you're anywhere in the middle of that bell curve intelligence, it's you're just not going to get it. And then
essentially you have 2 paths, right? You have the Aesop path and you have the Grug acceptance path, right? You either become a sour grape or you just buy and accept you're an idiot like everybody else and try to stack some more. There really is no middle ground. The middle ground is the people who are short Bitcoin.
Yeah, and there's the majority of people fall into that middle ground right now, sadly, but I think they're starting to realize it. Number go up is a powerful meme, right?
That's what I'm saying. I've been saying this for years. It's Bitcoin doesn't need marketing. Number go up is the marketing. There's no amount of football ads that will compete with number go up. And number go up, they come in, they're gonna buy the tops, right? Hopefully they don't sell. And then they're the next round. A lot of them buy the top, sell the bottom, and then they are ready for the next cycle to do it correctly.
Experience is the best teacher. I think with that, right? Like sometimes you need to
Yes,
get burned a little bit, but
absolutely.
now, I mean, and it's it's one of those things where it's like this is just basic economics, people. Like we're just talking about absolutely finite supply, which we've never really had before. So I guess that part is not basic, but theoretically, it's been part of that supply demand, you know,
I mean, you don't
problem.
even need to
Like,
understand that. You look at an asset that's 15 years old, okay? It starts at a cent, okay, and now it's at $71,000, okay? And it seems to be like having these pumps every 4 years, right?
hmm,
Like instead of buying lattes, right? Like just buy a few units of this asset and have some fun watching it, and then maybe you buy some more. Like there's not like you don't need to understand anything.
so are you of the opinion like because some people will say like, oh, don't buy anything you don't understand. You're saying like, no, like I don't care if you don't understand it. You should probably buy some, like just
But the
for
problem is
yourself.
nobody understands anything that they buy. They pretend that they do, right? Like, look at me. I'm a value investor on my, Fidelity trading account with like $1,000, right? Like, and then they read like 50 Buffett books, like, the Munger books, they just, and then they go and they tell all their friends about all the shit they understand. And it's all like relative to maybe 1% of their allocation of capital. So like they have all this stock. Look at me, I'm an investor now, right? And it's like 1% of their total allocation. The rest is like their house.
Yeah,
Which
true.
was essentially buy and hold.
Right. Yeah, it's true. They really have always been store of value investors versus value investors. If you own
That's
a
right.
house, like that's what you are. You're waiting for a number go up with your house.
The problem is it's not sexy. There is no thinking involved. You know what I mean? Like you freeze up your hands to go do something else, right? So I don't know, pick up gardening or something. Like you don't need to be an investor. That's kind of the whole point.
It's something that's lost, I think, on a lot of people. I think that maybe that's why you get so much of this pushback from the TradFi spaces, because they've spent a lot of times their entire lives, their entire careers, thinking that they have an edge over everyone else because they know more, because they've studied more of all of these different economic principles of fiat economics, of course, and all of these different techniques for maximizing their returns on these different fiat assets. And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow to say, you know what, it doesn't matter all of that knowledge you have.
Well, I mean, like think about it this way, right? Like the fiat system, like the whole, like you need to know how to scam the scam, right? So it does take a lot of education, right? It does take it takes a PhD in finance to know how to scam the scam, right? The problem is like if we remove the scam, like and you just say to you like buy and hold this like math unit, like it doesn't sound like a very smart proposition. But that's it. Like we're all gonna be savers again, right? Like it's like the average person on Main Street shouldn't have to know how to invest, right? They should know how to like I don't know, like fix their sidewalk, like which car to buy, something like that. They shouldn't have to know like P.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't have to go check the P on the stuff that they have. It's insane. That a normal person should have to do that, right? But when the money is melting, right, and they don't have a place to save, I mean, it makes complete sense that like people go try to buy GameStop.
Right.
Try to meme stocks into existence, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting world out there, but things are changing.
And speaking, that's actually a nice segue. Speaking of things changing, I wanted to get, because I very much value your the way that you think about things, because you tend to have thoughtful and also usually fairly humorous answers, which I like as a fan of humor. But I'm curious. Speaking of changing things, there's seems like always, and this for you, this is probably just like Groundhog Day, having been around for a while, but always the different debates, discussions around changing Bitcoin or quote unquote upgrading Bitcoin. And back to what we talked about earlier with just the fact that layer one is
Excuse me.
Oh, bless you. Layer 1 is distinctly limited in its scope of, not in the terms of the value it can settle, but in terms of the number of people that can interact on that layer 1. So how do you approach kind of the again, the changing, upgrading, quote unquote, Bitcoin side of things versus the ossification side? Like how do you, when you see these debates happening, that which you sometimes, partake in, how do you look at that? How do you approach that, like from a logical perspective of what is actually something that people need to pay attention to that's a legitimate concern versus, okay, these are nice ideas, but if we're just spinning our wheels here and trying to appear smart and put our stamp on Bitcoin by coming up with these new ideas to solve things and fix things that don't actually solve or fix things.
I mean, like, all software needs gardening, right? So that you can't escape, right? Because computers get upgraded, and your software needs to get upgraded so that it runs on the new computer, right? So you can be very simplistic about that. I like running old nodes. I have many versions of Bitcoin running that are very old. I mean, our store still is on one address nodes. It's an uptime of 8 years.
Wow.
So, like in that sense, it's like, who cares? So I'd say just like turn off Twitter, just log out. And if something is truly, truly important, it will find its way to you, like in terms of like a necessity for you to know. Reality is like nobody knows anything, especially when it comes to Bitcoin. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's many conversations. The conversations will be had, right? Like, I mean, developers want to develop, right? Researchers want to research, and then there's a lot of people who don't want any changes, right? So, if a change gets enough traction, right, that enough economic nodes are interested in that change, then maybe it happens. We don't have an official activation method for Bitcoin. We don't have an official activation path for Bitcoin. We don't have an official roadmap for Bitcoin. Bitcoin Core people are not official Bitcoin. There is no official anything in Bitcoin. Anyone can change the code. I highly encourage Greenpeace to go and change the code. So like, yes, please be my guest and change the code. It's a very difficult concept, I think, for people to understand. That nobody is official, and nobody's more important than others, except for maybe the size of the pile that they can dump on the other fork. But it's only true on the dumping scenario. In a standard operation day, it makes no difference, right? Because it's not proof of stake. So there is this very sort of like complex dynamics in Bitcoin that I think like the best sort of like mental model is just like ignore it. Turn off the TV. It's like turn off Twitter and just move on with your life. Go live your life. Go build some value. Who cares?
I like that advice because I think also most folks are not even technically equipped to be able to understand the nuances of some of these proposals, and it really does them no good to try and take the 50,000 foot view of the proposal and then jump to a conclusion about whether or not this is good or bad. In reality, like, it probably won't happen, and if it does, okay, as you said, all that really matters is the size of your pile if it comes to a dumping scenario. Can you actually explain that? Because I realized in kind of reading through some of these Twitter debates that a lot of people don't understand the concept of an economic node.
Yeah,
which I thought was kind of simple.
A node
but I guess
means
not.
literally nothing. Okay, so like you're running a Raspberry Pi with Bitcoin node on it. That really means squat to the network. Maybe you're just helping relay some transaction, but it really doesn't really matter. What matters in Bitcoin is self-validation, right? So essentially, like every time you send it, you receive a transaction, you validate against your consensus code, right? Your node. right? It just happens that 99.99% of the people use Bitcoin Core node. Some use knots. So anyway, so let's say I want to change Bitcoin to have, I don't know, like 10% inflation per year, right? Great monetary policy, right? So what happens now is my money is going to be different than the rest of the nodes in the network, their money, right? Because my money now does not match that formula. I have different formula than their money. And now what happens is, let's say I get like quite a bunch of people to come with me on this direction, right? A lot of people, a lot of nodes, but they only really represent like say 30% of the total Bitcoin in existence, right? Now that could be tricky, right? But then Walker happens to have a nice chunk of Bitcoin, and he goes like, you know what? I don't like this fork. I don't like the way this direction is going. So as we make our first few blocks on this new forked formula, Walker goes to Coinbase and say, you know what? I'm gonna dump this UTXOs I have on that fork. So you now just economically exercise your exit of that fork. And if enough people do that on that fork trends towards zero in economic value, right? So essentially, like the more economic capacity that refuses to go on that other fork, or even better goes because they're economical actors, not idiots, they go and sell that fork token, right? They cause that token to trend towards zero, right? And now you just had an economic lesson on the other side of don't do that.
And we have exact historical precedence for this, because this is exactly what happened with both Bitcoin Cash and then also Bitcoin SV.
Yes,
forking again.
They're all trending towards zero.
Yep.
Everybody dumped. We called it an airdrop. Everybody dumped their assets on the other chain.
How did that actually work at the time? Like, did Coinbase just, like, for example,
not just Coinbase, like there were many,
like all the exchanges just listed this new.
There were
new
many
fork?
exchanges that listed, and there were also futures on it. BitMEX had futures on each token.
Oh wow! So that's taking some layers of abstraction there. I mean, and we can see very clearly what the market decided. The market now values Bitcoin as 68,000 bomb dollars, and it values these other forks significantly less.
Yeah, so there is another like sort of like aspect of this nuance, like that's very nuanced about this, where there is also the transaction validation throughput, right? So like as you validate and relay a lot of transactions. So say for example Coinbase, right? It's not their coins to dump, but it is their node that is validating a lot of those transactions through those consensus rules, right? And that volume is also another indication as to which fork you are in, right? Like which fork do you support? So there is all these dynamics, but they're all based on the economics of economically ignoring the other fork.
And I mean, I think what perhaps may not be immediately apparent to a new Bitcoiner is the game theory of all of this, which is that it is not in the incentive, like no large economic node and large economic actor with a large pile is incentivized to accept any sort of new monetary policy or Bitcoin policy that is potentially going to risk the value of their pile. Like they're not going to do that. That they are not going to accept an inflation fork that puts tail emissions on Bitcoin. Why? Yeah. Because that's going to make their Bitcoin less valuable. Like there's no way they will accept that. And I think once you come around to that realization, you say, oh, okay. So again, this is a free market operating with people making individual economic decisions that are going to best benefit them. And assuming that they are rational and want to keep and increase the value of what they hold, they are not going to do something fucking stupid like vote with their economic power to dump Bitcoin for Bitcoin inflation coin.
And this gets fun, right? Because you can FUD it and say, but you know what? The U.S. can just buy all of the Bitcoin. No, they can beat up the price of the Bitcoin with infinite money, right? That's kind of like what Sailor is doing, right? Like they're essentially just beating up the Bitcoin price. So, like you can't just buy all of an asset just because you think you have all the economic capacity, right? Like all you're doing is just bringing the price up because people are going to wait for you to pay more, right? The game theory on Bitcoin is actually quite complete. It's amazing.
Really, I would hope that Bitcoin starts being used as the key example of game theory in action, like in a practical sense, in all universities going forward, because it just like once you work through it enough times and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, so this makes sense, and yeah, there's really no way around this, again, because as you said, it doesn't matter if you try to print in the words of Joe Biden, $100 billion trillion dollars, all you are doing is bidding up the price, and still some people will not sell even as the price continues to get bid up. Some people will, of course. There's a price.
You're going to get the never sellers, and you're going to get the people who can't even move their coins, who may not say anything.
Right.
It's I mean, it never worked through history to try to just buy everything of an asset, right? Like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And I think more people are coming around to that realization. Perhaps even the Bill Ackmans of the world. I wanted to ask your opinion on something else, because you've talked a decent amount. I heard some Bitcoin reviews around this as well, and I think you talked about it, I believe, as well on maybe it was Preston's show. But just some of the proposals for Bitcoin that are actually maybe have some merit, some of the new the BIPs, like not even necessarily new, but like CTV and this idea of covenants. Can you give the I am not a developer, but I want to kind of have a mental model for understanding this explanation of what that is? And is that one of these things that people should just completely ignore, or something that there is some signal there and they should pay attention to because it has some implications, whether good or bad, down the road?
So OpCTV it's like a grug brain BIP. Do you know like that? You know that little game for babies where there's like holes of different shapes, and then you have like a little. Okay, so that's OpCTV. Okay. Check, template, verify. So like, does it fit the hole or does it fit the hole? Okay.
That's a really good ELI 5 right there, or like ELI 1 even. That's solid.
So that's CTV. But what that does is when you create a Bitcoin script, right? You're essentially committing to a template, like in if it was CTV, right? And that means you are essentially creating a covenant, right? You're creating a condition in which you have to meet in order for the money to be spent. Current model of Bitcoin, the spending conditions are on the output. Okay, so that means, like, does the signature checks? Yes. Okay, you can move that coin, right? You can move the really assigned ownership of that coin, right? What Covenants is going to do is also have conditions on the input. That means the money's still there, it just can't be spent. We already have that with check time lock verify. So essentially, like you can set and say, hey, this coin cannot be spent until the block number whatever, right? So you can wait 100 blocks, right, to spend. It's already possible. So what we're trying to do now is have a more general purpose one. So you create a template, and that template could be like an n amount of things. And with that, we can create very interesting contracts, right? Including, ideally, we get up vault with that. So that means we can now do, do you know what an HSM is? It's a hardware security module. Essentially, like, you can have a spending policy on chain, right? And by the way, I would only want CTV if I get up vault. Otherwise, I'm not interested.
Okay. Let it be known.
Yeah, because then like, maybe cold card doesn't need to exist anymore. I can just have a script in on chain that says, don't spend more than 1 BTC per cycle outside of these addresses. You can do very complex, interesting scripts. So now you have a vault. Your Bitcoin is safe on chain, right?
Is there any way to ever to go back and, like, let's say I want to remove that template from these these UTXOs that it's assigned to? Can you do anything like?
You can create essentially what we call a nuclear button.
Okay.
So that a nuclear option there, where in that case you would have a cold card that creates that key. So you would have an extra key that could essentially bypass the vault.
Okay.
You can also have a semi bypass of the vault that goes to another vault. And there's all kinds of stuff. And if you lose a key, not the nuclear key, but the other keys, you would because there would be a timing effect. You could actually move the funds to another vault before the attacker gets the funds, for example. There's a lot of cool stuff that can be done. We already do this with HSMs, right? With spending policies in hardware, but those are not enforced by on-chain dynamics. So they need computers to do this, and these computers could be hacked, right? So if we don't need computers to enforce spending policy, things get very interesting. But it's more complexity to Bitcoin. It's other things. I think it's pretty safe. We've studied it to death for the last I don't know how long now. But like everything, the likelihood of changing Bitcoin is always lower than not changing Bitcoin. So essentially, I assume it's not coming, but I would like it to happen.
I think you had I forget if it was on Twitter or Noster, but you had a point about this, basically saying like that shouldn't pursue a user activated soft fork for something like this, but should instead kind of build out the client implementations, show that this is something that can be usable, and then go forward with it. Can you touch on that a little bit, kind of the multiple paths?
So like the reason why UASF and like the whole sort of like fork wars happen is because it was an existential question to Bitcoin, right? We had to fight. The fight was brought to us. So we had to conscript the man, and we had to get out there. Otherwise, the money was going to die. So in that sense, yes, we had to essentially create a rebellion, right, with a rebellion client that ran a specific type of code that essentially forced the coins to go in a certain direction, right? The Bitcoin consensus to go in a certain direction. It comes with risks, right? Rebellions can fail, but it did work, right? Now, because like having covenants or not having covenants is not an existential question to Bitcoin. It's just it's a nice to have. I think creating a rebellion is not a great idea. That's essentially like what happens in pretty much like every political dynamic that ever happened before. It's like at the end of the revolutionaries kill each other, right? Because that's all that they know what to do. So I don't want to see things going in that direction. You'd be silly and counterproductive.
You don't want a French Revolution 2.0, in other words, where we guillotine the guillotiners.
Exactly. I mean, Bitcoin is not even democratic, so like it gets even more weird. So
well, I appreciate the context on that, and I think that analogy for CTV is really good as well. With the basically you're like a kid with the blocks. You need to fit the right block in the right sized hole. No round pegs and square holes, and vice versa. It's giving you optionality for how you program your on-chain Bitcoin to behave throughout the future and what rule sets are involved there. Fair? Okay.
Yeah.
No, and because I think, again, it's one of those things where there's so many of these debates that like I'm like only technical enough to be like slightly dangerous, like to have a, again, basic understanding of things. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners are in that camp. And then they see these different debates happening, and they have a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, I'm for this, or I'm against this, or whatever, and to spend so much time debating these things without really having the understanding of what the implications truly are. And so I appreciate the context from somebody who understands it far better than I do. If I can, I want to get your take on something else, how you think about the whole rare sats thing, with which like sats don't really even, well, like, do sats even exist? Yeah, and I mean, for people out there who have been seeing stuff about rare sats and ordinals, I think it's important to understand that these are, would you call them like meta protocols, or meta rules? Because they're not. It's nothing on chain. It's nothing. There's no rules in Bitcoin that talk about this. It's just an agreement off chain. Like, so we can call it I don't know, meta rule set, something like that.
Listen, it's the same reason why I don't read philosophy books. Like you're just, I did when I was younger, like you're just like trapping thought and wasting your time, go live your life kind of thing. These are all sort of meta semantic discussions, and you can create markets around meta semantic discussions, right? The inscriptions are real. They are on chain. The ownership of them is sort of tenuous. It's just people agreed on a system of ownership. But you know what? It's no different than society, right? We have a soft bomb enforced system of ownership, right? It's like I have a contract that says we did this, but do I even own the land?
Well, that's a great question.
Can you own the land? Exactly, right? Like it's like. The terminal velocity of this is like, it's like straight into the toilet, right? Like, it really is pointless. There's people who believe in this system of ordinals and the first sat being the sat, and and let them have fun. Who cares? I mean, it makes no difference in my life. Do I own in their belief system? Not interested. I have other things to do in my life. I feel like people are like looking for shit to like be worried about because the system just works. So I mean, let them make the miners rich. Let them make the Lightning people have to actually learn to scale. And I mean, there really isn't much to like, waste your time with this.
I once again, I enjoy your opinion on that, because I think that so many people, it's easy to get sucked into the muck and the mire of these discussions. But the reality of it is that really the market ends up working itself out pretty well. And number go up fixes a lot of things. Like,
everything.
Again, like block space is limited, and it is going to get more expensive in fiat terms. I'm curious, do you think that block space also continues to get more expensive in Bitcoin terms as well, like both fiat and Bitcoin terms?
Absolutely. People are going to have to do UTXO consolidations and like it's just, remember, block space is denominated in Bitcoin,
right?
Not in fiat.
Sats per VByte, right?
So like shit's going to get very expensive and complicated as time passes by, but maybe not. I mean, like, ETFs are layer 2, right? I mean, they actually, like, they're taking a lot of transactions, right, that would be happening on chain, happening off chain. So like the usual a run up of the price where everybody wants to take their tiny little like UTXOs out of Coinbase, right? It's not gonna, maybe it doesn't happen this time, right? Maybe a lot of it goes through the ETFs. There is a lot of I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting point, though, about offloading a lot of that store of value usage of Bitcoin layer 1, which is the primary use case of Bitcoin layer 1, right? Is an immutable ledger of store of value that cannot be debased and inflated away. But it's offload. The ETFs are really offloading a lot of that to custodians. Yes, absolutely. But like you said, somebody they don't need to worry about taking. They're not really interested in self custody if they're going and buying the $40 or however much they are ETF shares in their retirement account or on E-Trade or whatever. Like they're not too concerned about self custody, and they're not going to. I don't think there's going to be any mechanisms for redeeming that Bitcoin through the ETF issuer. You have your custodial Bitcoin that you're using their layer 2 store of value technology, basically custodial store of value technology. Maybe that's one way to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, and all the rugging that could come with that.
Right.
It's like nothing is without trade-offs.
Do you think with Coinbase being the basically the custodian for I think 8 of 10 out of these? I think that is it Valkyrie or Fidelity? Or I think it's Fidelity built out their own. Yep. Maybe Bitwise did as well. I'm not positive on that, but I think there's like 2 of them that are doing a different model, and the rest are using Coinbase, basically. I mean, is this just the biggest honeypot in history?
Again, overthinking it. Who cares? It's their problem. This is their own set of trade-offs, and if they get rugged, I mean, again, it teaches a lesson. In one side, teaches a lesson and defers the infinite moon price a little longer, right? Because people are going to be feeling pretty burnt out. On the other side, I mean, it works out, and and they just did the custody right. I mean, I'm sure it's all like offline and all that stuff, and they're gonna probably have like ways of having multi-party, and it's okay. Things will sort themselves out.
This is why I love talking to you, NVK, because you're always putting my mind at ease about things, and I think that it's a good position to have, because again, it's like there are certain things that are outside of our control, and it doesn't do us really any good to stress about them. Like that's
but you can't stress about shit that you can't control, because you can't change it.
It's like the key tenet of stoicism, right? Is like, just if you can't change it, don't fucking worry about it. And I think people would do well to heed that advice. I want to be conscious of your scarce time here, because I know you're a busy man, but I'd just like to know if, in a more general sense, what are you most excited about on the tech side, whether that be directly related to Bitcoin, maybe it's CTV and Opvault, or it's related to Noster, or it's related to the intersection of Bitcoin layer 2 and Noster and AI, like you're building with Unleashed.Chat. What is exciting you right now and gives you even more hope for continued winning in the future than you already have right now?
This one is a little biased just because of the timing. We started shipping Cold Card Q today, so okay,
well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm just happy to get this one out the door.
Congratulations.
It's been some time. This one enjoyed a little bit of the COVID hangover with supply chains, so it took a little longer than we wanted. But it's just finally out, man. I'm just happy about that.
You can breathe a little bit more.
Yeah, seriously. No, we ship. We like to ship. So like just getting this out is nice. Mini script, barbecue QR is taking hold as well, which is nice. It's a much better QR standard. There's a lot of work being put on doing Noster, Cashew sort of lightning solutions. Kali just had an announcement about this like crazy way of doing assets in multiple mints at the same time. That de-risks things as well. What else? Primo is gonna help the normies sort of like do Bitcoin even if they don't know they're doing Bitcoin.
It's really clean. They've done a nice job.
I mean, Mutiny is doing a bunch of cool stuff too. It's just endless, man. You've heard the Bitcoin.review pod. Yeah. We go 3 hours reading like software releases, and there's still like more on the list that we don't get to. So like it's just so insanely productive out there that it's hard not to be bullish on the tech.
I think the nothing is happening on Bitcoin narrative really becomes a difficult one to push these days.
No, nothing is happening in Bitcoin.
Nothing.
Let's keep it that way.
Okay, yeah. Nothing. Don't look over here. There's nothing to see.
No. Go over there. Go add shit to Ethereum or whatever. Like, just leave us alone.
Go keep breaking that with another fork. I lied. I do have one more question, and it's about Unleashed.Chat, because I think this is more about the economic model of it with funding it with Bitcoin, because I think this is a really interesting thing that maybe people haven't considered about the implications of AI compute, which is that right now, most of the payment for AI compute is paid with like credit cards. And I would say probably like 99% of the cases, people aren't doing wire transfers. Like, 100% of the cases, people are paying with credit cards. The settlement for credit cards is very, very, very long before the person who is expending that compute power, which is real power, is actually getting paid for that compute. And it can also be clawed back. Do you think we see a transition? Like, do you think that some of these larger actors in the AI space will start to realize, oh shit, Bitcoin just makes sense to use as our method of accepting payment because we can actually get final settlement way faster and not have to worry about it?
So an Unleash is like is Bitcoin native, right? So we calculate the unit of generation and then we charge your account for it, right? So you load up Lightning Sats there and we just sort of charge from it. And it's been working great. And you also, we offer privacy, which the other companies don't. And because you're paying in Bitcoin, we also don't need to know who you are when, you do your compute. So it's like the alignment of incentives is just amazing, right? And I really don't think, because, OpenAI, all this close AI and all these things, they're all fiat companies, right? I don't think they're going to go there. I don't think they care. I think it's great. It's like they're gonna go in that direction. We're gonna go in this direction, right? And maybe we outcompete some of these companies. Maybe we find a nice niche where, the people who want privacy, who want to own their data, they have a fighting chance, right? I mean, this whole thing really started because I wanted to do AI analysis on our sales stuff, on our books, and our code base. And I don't want to forego my ownership of that data to OpenAI, right? So, in our system, you own your data, right? We don't train our AI on your data. We don't use your data. We can't even see your data, and sort of like that's the main difference. Because of Bitcoin, we can do that. At least in the short term, few years, I don't think we're gonna see any difference on them. But we're going to see it on us, right? Which is great.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because now I actually have, I mean, let's be honest, ChatGPT is a very nice tool.
Oh yeah, they're the best.
Like
they are the best.
It's phenomenal. Like
there's a lot of mechanical Turk there, it's a whole other conversation, but they are absolutely the best. And having, I don't know, $30 billion or whatever they have does help a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little. But it comes with other issues too. But what's funny is that like Mixtral for cold, for example, analysis is comparable. Like, I mean, if not better, actually. Really? There is like lots of like little sort of niches where the open source models are better, substantially better. It's just that like the general knowledge trivia stuff that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Look, the computer's talking to me. They're much better at that.
Which is comes to actual, your point about the mechanical Turk as well.
Exactly. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. But when it comes to like specific stuff, like specific analysis of things, like it's fully comparable now.
Yeah. Do you think that OpenAI is actually like? There's so much dumb speculation about like, oh, they must be on the brink of AGI.
Well, they're doing that for the fundraising, right?
Right. Like, my opinion, I do not think they are on the brink of AGI, nor that whatever the initial version of quote AGI is will be what people imagine it to be. I mean,
I think it's going to come from a complete like left field kind of thing. These companies are going to keep on finding walls that they hit. The technology is like amazing and early, right? So there's still places to go. We still have like on the current technology, the current way of thinking, the current way of doing things, we still can go like quite a few years and make like incredible achievements. And we're still so far from AGI.
Yeah.
What I think is going to happen is we're going to get this all the way up to like this awesome sort of level that sort of like, already solves 90% of human problems, but the AGI stuff comes complete left field, other industry, like completely unrelated. And I don't know, like it's just, I don't think these things are going to come from the same place.
I have one more question, actually. I lied again. If you have time for one more.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. You are a very successful entrepreneur and technologist in the Bitcoin space. This is clear. You clearly have a love for building, for shipping, whether that be code or products. And it's quite impressive, what you have built, and that you also just decide to build things because there are problems that you need solved, like with Unleashed.Chat. You need something solved internally, and you just said, you know what, let me build this. And you know what, this is probably something other people need too. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs of any age who are looking, to build right now, and are trying to figure out what is the best place to direct their efforts in this emerging ecosystem of Bitcoin, of Noster, of AI, of all these things these ideas whose time has kind of seemingly come? And there's this big open, because as you said, we're early with all of this stuff, right? What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are, maybe they have an idea now, maybe they're working on an idea? What would you tell to them, or what would you tell to your younger self, maybe, if you were coming up right now instead of being more established now?
I think, like, I mean, my preference, this is not like an absolute answer, but like my preference is demand-based engineering, right? It's like, there is a problem, can I charge money to offer a solution, right? Like it really is sort of like rug brain simple. Yeah. I think this approach is very approachable. So like, just go solve somebody's problem and charge money for it. And if they're willing to pay, you're probably onto something. And stop jerking off and ship. Like there really isn't much more to it. Like it is actually quite simple. Like somebody has to lick the envelopes, so that you can get the envelope somewhere, right? Go, just do it. Stop asking for permission. Stop sort of like wasting your time trying to like just fundraise. Like if the question is between fundraise or build, like build. Like there is only so much time, right? So and have fun. Like if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Like those are the only three aspects that I think like I could say with confidence. The rest is just nobody knows, and it's just like between luck or being in the right place, by working hard and sort of that kind of stuff.
Oh, I love it. That's so to everyone listening, stop jerking off, go out there and build. That it's good advice. Well, I want to thank you. And speaking of time, it is scarce, and like Bitcoin, extremely scarce. But Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for sharing your scarce time on another fucking Bitcoin podcast. I'll put all your Noster and Twitter and Unleashed and other links in the show notes. But just want to thank you. If there's anywhere else people should go and check out that you want to send them right now.
No, I mean, like, no, listen, thanks for having me. It's the bull run. The best way of keeping your Bitcoins is by not losing them. So make sure your security is in order. Don't get surprised by it. And that's it.
All right. Well, NVK, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And I feel more calm already coming out of this discussion with you. I'm not worried about anything now. I wasn't too much before, but now I'm really not worried.
Amazing. We've accomplished something then.
Amen. All right. Take it easy. And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring another fucking Bitcoin podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net or hit me up on social media. On Noster, head to primal.net/Walker. And on Twitter, search for @WalkerAmerica or @TitcoinPodcast. You can also watch the video version of this show on X or on YouTube by going to youtube.com/@WalkerAmerica or Rumble by searching for @WalkerAmerica. Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million. But Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time to listen to another fucking Bitcoin podcast. Until next time, stay free.